Thank you, Chairman Hunter. Pat Wood, CEO of Hunt Energy Network. I was chairman of the Texas Public Utility Commission from 95 to 2001, when the wholesale and retail markets were opened up to competition by our legislature and governor. The unbundling of the utilities from the regulated side into the competitive side happened back then, and all the magic and some heartache began. I went on with Governor Bush to chair the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, oversight of the natural gas and electric industry at the federal level from 01 to 05, and assumed my job as CEO of our group in 2019. Our headquarters is in Dallas, and our generation dispatch center is in Houston. We're developing, owning, and operating generation assets here throughout ERCOT at the distribution level, the lower voltage level, the kind of unexplored territory part of the grid. We're right next, our current batteries are right next to the utility substations that scatter the state and provide power to the transmission and distribution grids at that point. We have 10 operational 10 megawatt standalone battery storage facilities today. Expect to have another 20 projects come online this year with the ultimate goal of 50 distributed batteries across the state. I'm also publicly announcing here today that we are moving forward with thermal dispatchable generation, also 10 megawatt size. And we're in the interconnection process with utilities on that as well. Texas has a problem, and we want to be part of the solution, the complete solution. We're intentionally building smaller projects closer to customers because we believe that these projects provide more value to the ERCOT system. They can relieve congestion. They can serve customers downstream of a transmission constraint, grid, substation. They're flexible. We can locate at stress points through the grid. There was a great discussion earlier, one of the members, on congestion. Placing resources closer to the customer also increases energy security in future blackouts, future times of stress, and by reducing the number of failure points between a point of production and a point of consumption. To date, Hunt Energy Network has been focused on dispatchable, standalone battery storage. I should add that they're refillable and reusable, but generally not considered renewable. So I want to correct Mr. Woodfin on that one, if I may. It's tough to do because Dan's a rock star. We fully participate in the ERCOT market. We bid in our resources and numerous ancillary services. Sometimes we just are providing energy in the energy market when the price signals are good for that. We're dispatched at ERCOT's direction every minute of the day. Our business is settled by ERCOT and paid for by load-serving entities, reps, co-ops, munis like Cliff, you just heard from STEC. We charge from the grid. We hold that power, and then we dispatch it when we're told to, when ERCOT and or the market signals that they need it. Batteries respond very quickly, within seconds, within sub-seconds, in fact. We can respond almost instantly to dips in frequency, and frequency dips for a number of reasons. I think we've heard those laid out today. Variations in consumption, steel mills turn up or down, big users like that. Some of Todd's clients moving in and out as well. Weather, big impact. Thunderstorms knocks down temperature in Houston. That load just drops just like that. Air conditioners don't run anymore when it's cooler outside. Maybe even knock some customers offline, so that load falls offline. We don't like those kind of load reductions at all. A cloud passes over a West Texas solar farm, dropping that power production a bit. The nukes might trip, rarely, but they're big. Our largest units are the 2 nuclear stations in Texas. Wind forecast can be off, or wind just underperforms from when a forecast that actually may not be that far off. That's where batteries are a perfect fit. They just fit that little space. They help stabilize the grid almost instantaneously. They make it resilient and more reliable. And I wish when I was a regulator setting this all up that we had like the gas industry does, had storage to work with, because that ability to break that instantaneous link between production and consumption, the temporal aspect of power that is so hard, is now finally here. It's here because of the economics of battery technology have come down like we've seen across much of our industries in the U.S. It's been a real helpful thing. A gas plant might take 30 minutes or so to come online. We can drop online in about a quarter of a second. We both contribute to the reliability of the grid. I like to think of it like a runner. We're up running the first lap. We pass the baton. If the outage is long, we can pass the baton to a unit that is at that point up and ready to run. So there's a good symbiotic relationship between gas and batteries in our market, and I hope that will continue to be recognized as a real attribute and asset. Key point to recognize is that most of our batteries in Texas today are generally 1 or 2 hour batteries max, but that doesn't mean that they're 1 hour batteries. So if I run a 10 megawatt battery at half speed, it's a 2 hour battery. If I run it at quarter speed, which we sometimes do, it's a 4 hour battery. So it's like your phone. If you use it a lot, the battery needs recharging in the middle of the day. If you're just checking email a couple of times a day, it lasts all day. So they're pretty flexible resources. Now we're to market design, which is, I think, what Ms. Holloway told me we really wanted to talk about. Texas has the most efficient, robust, competitive energy market in the U.S. and possibly the world. I'm not bragging because a lot of people went to and made it so over these past 25 years. I told Chairman Lake when he came into office as one of the old guard that it's been a quarter century, and it's a good and right thing to do to re-look at how it's working and to make changes, even major changes if necessary. So I think it was timely to do it. I wish it hadn't taken Winter Storm Uri to get us to that point, but we are where we are. One key new issue that has changed since that time, and it's one that I actually celebrate, is the renaissance of Texas-based wind and solar energy. It's clean, it's cheap. We didn't do much more than put out a big bipartisan welcome mat back in the 90s, and in they came. And now we're leading really, I think, all states and possibly, I think, all but 4 countries in the world with a renewable electricity on this grid, just because Governor Bush told me, Pat, we like wind. So we went and figured out what it would take. It didn't take much because we just removed those discriminatory aspects of the old system and allowed the new resources to come in. In the late 70s, the federal government granted Section 29 tax credits for shale and tight sands to oil and gas production. I was a staffer at the Railroad Commission at that time, and we were processing a lot of those qualification permits there. That led to the phenomenal invention of fracking and to horizontal drilling, and the benefits are ones that we're reaping as a state, nation, and world today. That was an inspired program that actually did what good programs do and was sunsetted once it became pervasive in 1992. That same Section 29 included wind and solar and a number of other resources, such as were cataloged earlier. And I thought that would also be allowed to sunset, and it has been numerous times up and down. But instead, batteries and nuclear power were added to the mix just last year in the IRA bill that the federal government passed, the president signed, and the whole kit was extended for 10 years. So to be sure, there are subsidies in the oil and gas business throughout the tax code, but candidly, these overt electric power market subsidies are tax credits, I should say, do impact the functioning of our market. So you've got some favored resources now and some unfavored resources. And an energy-only market, which I think was accurately explained by all people that testified here on the last panel and Todd as well, that dislocation is not where an energy market can work its magic. So I have to say, having a topping off payment for the unfavored resources is not a bad way to conclude things need to be done. And I think that's where the PUC's proposed PCM comes into play. The changes made by the PUC last year in response to Senate Bill 3 were substantial. I think those have been pointed out here today, been very helpful, putting additional revenue into the market. But it's not sufficient, I don't think, to bring the kind of new investment or the amount of new investment that we need in thermal generation, which the market does need. I can say that as a CEO of a company that is investing in thermal resources, we have found an innovative approach that uses small-scale peakers. It makes sense where we're planning to build, but when we looked at larger projects, the economics just didn't pencil out, and we do need all of them. So the right way to fix this is to define what we're trying to solve for, and then to create the products that meet that need. Let everything compete. Demand, supply, all kind of supply, new technology, old technology, to supply that product. I think that's the kind of innovation that we've created in our market so far, and that will continue. So what we're solving for is the resources, again, generation and demand, that are dependable on a variety of stressful days. There are two buckets of stress days in my mind, the hot ones and the cold ones. The hot days where we need fast ramping, dispatchable resources, gas, batteries, that can address unforeseen changes in temperature, in wind, in solar output, in large thermal outages that could happen. The end of the day ramp when the solar goes down and people go home and their load goes up, that's a pretty pronounced, for me, business opportunity as a battery guy, but that's a pretty pronounced stress period on the grid. The big stress period, and the one that knocked our state for the fourth time in a row in my career, back in February of 2021 in Uri, was the cold winter night, the long cold winter night, where there's not much wind blowing and a lot of electricity is used to heat homes. Those are two very different solutions. I honestly think, and all the people that I respect agree, that if you solve the second problem, the long cold winter night problem, you're going to necessarily solve the summer problem. It's just a difference in scale. You need those long duration resources. I'd love to think those could be batteries, and we will probably get to the day where you could get a 10-hour battery. I know there's a lot of neat technologies. I was just at a conference in Houston where a lot of those are being talked about. But today, batteries are not economic to do that. So you do need what we are about maxed out on, almost running out of, is enough thermal resources, enough dispatchable resources to close the gap there. So what products meet that need? The commission has chosen PCM. What I like about PCM that was proposed by the PUC is that it pays for resources that actually perform. When I was chairman of FERC at the federal level, a number of the power pools in the other parts of the country came forward with capacity market product designs that I approved. We didn't order those. Those were actually brought to us by the stakeholders from those different regions. And they pay generators in advance. But then if they don't perform, as happened just recently, I think last month in the mid-Atlantic states, or January, they claw those payments back, a couple of $2 billion, clawed them back. I don't think that's the best way to run a business. It's very difficult to do that. Paying only those resources that actually perform in a time of stress is a much better approach, which is one the PCM is doing. And I think that's a big improvement over other models. But investor uncertainty is a real concern here. I think when you think about a program that's going to hadn't been used before, and that's going to take a long time to implement. What gets done right now, and it's a discussion happening at ERCOT called the bridging solution. So what do we stick in place today to get us to some future point where we've got a robust, reliable, resilient grid? What we do today is really important. And we proposed in the ERCOT working group, my company did this week, and we just ripped the Band-Aid off and stick the PCM idea in the existing infrastructure that we've got, that we've all gotten used to for 10 years, this process called the operating reserve demand curve. It's nerdy, but what it is basically is an administrative curve that was designed by the commission after a lot of public input. It was changed after Uri. It involved a price cap that was at 9,000. The price cap came down but the outside went out. So in other words, as we get a tight grid, additional payments are given to encourage people to help solve that problem. I think what the PCM is really that construct. Pick the 30 days when the ORDC would be most stressed and add a super premium payment to that, and you get to where Chairman Lake wants to, which is that PCM output. I think you can get there a lot quicker and a lot simpler in a way that doesn't disrupt existing customers like Todd's talking about here, that we certainly care a lot about in our state, but actually allows those customers to maintain their products that they've hedged and contracted for. I think keeping it simple, using familiar tools, that's what gets your investment. And I'm very committed to delivering on our promise to invest in the state. But I do think for the benefit of us all, because we don't intend to solve the entire problem, we can't, but other companies all working together can close the gap. But I think we had it work really well in the late 90s, early 2000s, when a clarion welcome out was thrown out and put on the deck. And that's what I think will do it again for us. So I'll hush there and appreciate any questions or welcome any feedback